Are you over 65 and still wondering why happiness seems to be slipping through your fingers? You might be making crucial mistakes without even realizing it. Many of us spend decades dreaming about retirement, imagining all the freedom and joy it will bring, only to find ourselves feeling strangely empty, frustrated, or even depressed once we actually get there. The truth is, the habits and mindsets that served you well during your working years might be exactly what's stealing your happiness now. In this video, we're going to uncover 5 behaviors that are silently sabotaging your chance at true fulfillment after 65. These aren't obvious mistakes. They're subtle patterns that most people never recognize in themselves until it's pointed out to them. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which behaviors might be holding you back and, more importantly, what to do about them. Stay with us until the end because the 5th behavior is one almost everyone overlooks, yet it might be the most important key to unlocking the joy you've been missing. The good news is that small changes in how you approach this stage of life can dramatically transform your experience. These aren't just theories, they're based on real patterns observed in thousands of retirees who either struggled or thrived in their golden years. Now let's get started with the first happiness-blocking behavior. Behavior number 1, clinging to outdated identities. One of the most powerful barriers to happiness after 65 is holding on to identities that no longer serve you. Think about Michael, a 68-year-old former executive who spent 4 decades climbing the corporate ladder. His days were filled with meetings, decisions, and the constant validation that came from his professional status. When he retired, he thought he'd feel relieved. Instead, he felt invisible. At social gatherings, the first question people often ask is, "What do you do?" And Michael found himself saying, "I'm retired, but I used to be," always defining himself by what was in the past, never by what is in his present or future. Now compare Michael to Eleanor, also 68, who had an equally impressive career as a university professor. When Eleanor retired, she certainly missed aspects of her work, but she approached retirement differently. Instead of clinging to her identity as Professor Eleanor, she saw retirement as an opportunity to explore parts of herself that had been on hold. She began introducing herself as a community garden coordinator, a grandmother, a watercolor artist, and a volunteer literacy tutor. All new identities that gave her purpose and connection. The difference between Michael and Eleanor wasn't their past accomplishments or even their current activities. It was how they defined themselves. Michael remained anchored to an identity that no longer existed in his daily life, creating a constant sense of loss and diminishment. Every day reminded him of what he no longer was, rather than what he could become. Eleanor, meanwhile, allowed her identity to evolve, finding new sources of meaning and recognition that were appropriate to her current life stage. When you've spent decades building a career, raising a family, or establishing yourself in a community, those roles become deeply intertwined with your sense of self. Retirement doesn't just change your schedule, it fundamentally challenges who you are. If you find yourself constantly referencing your past roles, feeling annoyed when people don't know who you used to be, or struggling to answer questions about what you do now, you might be clinging to outdated identities. The solution isn't to forget your past or devalue what you've accomplished. It's to build new identities that fit your current life. Start by asking yourself what aspects of your former roles brought you the most satisfaction. Was it solving problems? Helping others? Creating things? Being recognized for your expertise? Once you identify these core satisfactions, look for new ways to experience them that don't depend on your former position. If you were a doctor who loved diagnosing complex cases, perhaps you'd find fulfillment in becoming a master gardener, diagnosing plant diseases. If you were a teacher who loved mentoring young people, volunteer opportunities with youth organizations might provide similar satisfaction. The key is to see yourself as a person in progress, not a person in the past. Try this simple exercise. Write down how you currently introduce yourself to new people. Then, create 3 alternative introductions that don't reference what you used to do, but instead highlight who you are becoming now. Practice these introductions until they feel natural and authentic. Remember, your value as a person has never been solely determined by your job title, income, or status. Those were just easy shortcuts for a society that doesn't always look deeper. Now is your chance to define yourself on more meaningful terms. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward to the second happiness-blocking behavior. Behavior number 2, isolating yourself socially. The second major barrier to happiness after 65 is allowing yourself to become socially isolated. Take Robert, for example, a 72-year-old who had a busy social life while working as a sales manager. His days were filled with client meetings, team interactions, and regular lunches with colleagues. When he retired, those built-in social connections disappeared. At first, he told himself he was just enjoying the peace and quiet, but months passed, then years, and his social circle continued to shrink. Now, he can go days without a meaningful conversation, telling himself that people are too busy, or no one wants to hear from an old man like me. Compare Robert to Margaret, also 72, who faced the same challenge when she retired from teaching. She noticed immediately how her daily social interactions dropped and felt the loneliness creeping in. But instead of accepting it, Margaret took action. She joined a morning walking group in her neighborhood, signed up for a weekly art class, and volunteers twice a month at the local library. Some days she still feels lonely, but she's built a new social framework that provides regular human connection. The difference isn't that Margaret is more extroverted or naturally sociable. It's that she recognized isolation as a threat to her happiness and actively worked to prevent it. Research has consistently shown that social connection is one of the strongest predictors of happiness and longevity, especially after 65. Our brains are wired for human interaction, and when we lack it, our mental and physical health suffer. Yet retirement often shrinks our social circles dramatically. The daily chats with coworkers, professional networking events, and even those brief interactions with people on your commute, all suddenly disappear. Without intentional effort, many retirees find themselves increasingly isolated. What makes this pattern particularly dangerous is how gradually it happens. You might not notice that your social interactions are decreasing week by week. Maybe you stop accepting invitations because you're tired, or it's too much effort to go out. Perhaps you tell yourself you'll reach out to friends next week, but never do. Small decisions accumulate until one day you realize your social life has all but disappeared. Breaking the cycle of isolation requires deliberate action. First, recognize that maintaining social connections after 65 takes more effort than it did when socializing was built into your daily structure. Set a goal to have at least one meaningful social interaction every day, even if it's just a substantive conversation with a neighbor or a phone call with a friend. Next, look for social activities that align with your interests. Joining groups organized around hobbies or causes you care about makes socializing feel natural rather than forced. Don't underestimate the value of routine social engagements. A regular coffee date, a weekly class, or a monthly volunteer shift provides structure and consistency to your social life. And finally, be willing to initiate. Many retirees wait for others to reach out, forgetting that their working friends and family members are caught up in busy schedules. Taking the initiative doesn't mean you're imposing. More often than not, people appreciate being thought of and included. Creating new connections after 65 might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're naturally reserved or if it's been years since you've had to make new friends. Start small. Smile and introduce yourself to someone at a community event, ask a thoughtful question in a class, or compliment someone and start a conversation. Remember that meaningful relationships don't develop overnight, but consistent, positive interactions gradually build into valuable connections. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move on to the third happiness-blocking behavior, which might be affecting you without you even realizing it. Behavior number 3, living in the past. One of the most insidious barriers to happiness after 65 is the habit of living mentally in the past rather than the present. Consider Thomas, a 76-year-old retiree who spends most of his days reminiscing about the good old days when he was raising his family and building his business. Every conversation eventually turns to stories from decades ago, and he constantly compares current events unfavorably to how things used to be. His home remains unchanged since the 1990s, filled with the same furniture, decorations, and even technology from years gone by. Thomas isn't just remembering the past, he's living in it, and as a result he finds very little joy in his present life. Now contrast Thomas with Sarah, also 76, who has equally rich memories of her earlier years. Sarah values her history and occasionally shares stories of the past, but she's primarily engaged with her life today. She's curious about new technology, follows current events, and has redecorated her home to suit her current tastes and needs. When you talk to Sarah, you get the sense that she's fully present, interested in today's experiences rather than constantly comparing them to yesterday's. The difference between Thomas and Sarah isn't the quality of their memories, it's their orientation toward time. Thomas is stuck in the past while Sarah lives primarily in the present. There's nothing wrong with cherishing memories or honoring traditions. In fact, reflecting on positive experiences from our past can be a healthy source of joy and identity. The problem occurs when nostalgia becomes your primary residence, when you spend more time mentally living in the past than engaging with the present. This backward focus creates a constant, unfavorable comparison, the idealized past versus the imperfect present. Many people don't realize how much time they spend dwelling on the past. It happens unconsciously, slipping into conversations, thoughts, and even how you make decisions. If you frequently begin sentences with, "back in my day," or "things were better when," you might be habitually living in the past. If you resist trying new approaches because the old way always worked fine, or if you find yourself unable to appreciate current experiences because they don't match your memories, your past orientation might be blocking your present happiness. Breaking free from the grip of the past doesn't mean forgetting or devaluing your history. Instead, it means developing a healthier relationship with time that allows you to fully inhabit your present life. Start by becoming aware of how often your thoughts and conversations drift backward. When you catch yourself making negative comparisons between present and past, gently redirect your attention to what's positive about the current moment. Practice saying yes to new experiences, even when they feel unfamiliar or slightly uncomfortable. One powerful technique is to develop a mindfulness practice that anchors you firmly in the present. Try this simple exercise. Each day, identify 3 brand new things that you notice or experience. They can be small, a different birdsong outside your window, the particular quality of light in the afternoon, or the taste of a new food. By training yourself to notice new things, you're teaching your brain to engage with the present rather than retreating to the familiar territory of the past. Remember that every phase of life has its unique gifts and challenges. Yes, your past may have included physical strength, career achievement, or raising young children. Precious experiences indeed. But your present offers different gifts: wisdom, perspective, freedom from many responsibilities, and the opportunity to know yourself more deeply than ever before. When you romanticize the past at the expense of the present, you miss the unique opportunities of this stage of life. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 3 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward to the 4th happiness-blocking behavior. Behavior number 4, refusing to adapt to change. One of the most reliable predictors of unhappiness after 65 is resistance to change. Take William, a 73-year-old retiree who prides himself on his consistency. When his children gave him a smartphone, he put it in a drawer, insisting his flip phone was good enough. When his doctor suggested he modify his diet for his heart health, he refused, saying he'd eaten the same way for 70 years and wasn't about to change now. When his community center offered digital payment options, he complained loudly, demanding they keep accepting checks. William isn't just expressing preferences. He's actively fighting against the natural evolution of the world around him, and it's making him increasingly frustrated, isolated, and irrelevant. Now compare William to Barbara, also 73, who approaches change with curiosity rather than resistance. When her grandchildren showed her how to video chat, she struggled at first but practiced until she mastered it, opening up a new way to connect with family across the country. When her neighborhood transitioned to a new trash collection system, she took the time to understand it rather than complaining. When her arthritis made her favorite hobby of gardening difficult, she adapted by using raised beds and ergonomic tools. Barbara doesn't embrace every change uncritically, but she approaches new situations with flexibility rather than rigid resistance. The world doesn't stop changing just because we've passed a certain age. Technology evolves, community structures shift, health needs transform, and social norms develop. Refusing to adapt to these changes doesn't preserve the past. It just ensures you'll find the present increasingly confusing, frustrating, and alienating. Many people don't recognize their own resistance to change. They view themselves as principled or traditional rather than rigid or stubborn. But there's a crucial difference between maintaining meaningful values and simply refusing to adapt to new circumstances. Signs that you might be struggling with adaptability include feeling constantly annoyed by new systems or technologies, frequently saying, "That's not how we used to do it," avoiding situations that require learning new skills, or feeling that the world is becoming increasingly incomprehensible. If you find yourself regularly complaining about changes that others seem to take in stride, your resistance to adaptation might be sabotaging your happiness. Developing adaptability doesn't mean abandoning your values or accepting every change uncritically. It means approaching new situations with openness rather than automatic resistance. Start by identifying areas where you tend to dig in your heels the most. Is it technology? New social norms? Changes in your community? Once you recognize your particular sticking points, you can work on them specifically. One effective technique is to practice the yes and approach borrowed from improvisation. Instead of immediately saying no to change, try responding with yes and how might this work for me? For example, if your community switches to an online system for activities, instead of refusing to participate, try, yes, this is different, and how might I learn to use this system to still participate in events I enjoy? This small shift in mindset opens possibilities rather than closing them off. Another important skill is distinguishing between means and ends. Often, we become attached to particular ways of doing things, means, rather than focusing on what we ultimately want to achieve, ends. If your goal is to stay connected with family, does it really matter whether that happens through phone calls, video chats, or in-person visits? If your goal is to remain independent, does it matter whether you achieve that by driving yourself or by mastering ride-sharing apps? By focusing on your underlying goals rather than the specific methods you're used to, you can remain flexible while still honoring what's important to you. Remember that adaptability is like a muscle. It can atrophy with disuse but strengthen with practice. Challenge yourself to try one new thing each week, whether it's a new food, a new technology, or a new route to a familiar destination. The more you practice adapting to small changes, the more resilient you'll become when facing larger ones. And that resilience is directly connected to your happiness in a world that will continue to change whether you resist it or not. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now we're about to reveal the 5th behavior that most people never recognize in themselves, yet it might be the most crucial one to address. Behavior number 5. Neglecting physical well-being. The final barrier to happiness after 65, and perhaps the most overlooked, is neglecting your physical well-being. Consider David, a 69-year-old who always took his health for granted. Throughout his working years, he was too busy for regular exercise, ate whatever was convenient, and viewed sleep as something to minimize to get more done. After retirement, these habits continued. He spends most days in his recliner watching television, eats processed foods because they're easy, and maintains irregular sleep patterns. When his body sends warning signals, stiffness, fatigue, minor pains, he dismisses them as just getting old. What David doesn't realize is that his neglect is accelerating his decline and dramatically reducing his capacity for joy. Now contrast David with Patricia, also 69, who approaches her physical health with intention. She's not a fitness fanatic or health obsessive. She simply recognizes that her body requires maintenance. She walks every morning not to set records but to keep moving. She prepares simple, nutritious meals because she notices how food affects her energy. She prioritizes consistent sleep because she knows it impacts everything from her mood to her thinking. When she experiences physical discomfort, she addresses it promptly rather than ignoring it. As a result, Patricia has the energy and capability to pursue activities that bring her fulfillment. Many people misunderstand what physical well-being means after 65. It's not about looking younger or performing athletic feats. It's about maintaining the functional capacity to live fully and independently. Yet it's astonishingly common for people to accelerate their own physical decline through neglect, then attribute the resulting limitations to inevitable aging rather than their own choices. This mindset creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Believing that decline is inevitable leads to behaviors that ensure decline happens. The body in later years is less forgiving of neglect. Skipping movement, consuming poor nutrition, or disrupting sleep patterns has more profound and lasting effects than it did in your younger years. The muscle you lose through inactivity is harder to rebuild. The mobility you surrender through sedentary habits is more difficult to recover. Yet many people over 65 continue to treat their bodies as afterthoughts, focusing on everything else while ignoring the physical foundation that makes all other experiences possible. Reclaiming your physical well-being doesn't require intense gym workouts or complicated diet plans. It starts with basic maintenance, consistent movement throughout the day, adequate hydration, nutritious foods that provide steady energy, and regular sleep patterns that allow for recovery. The specific forms these take will vary based on your current health status and preferences, but the principles remain the same: your body needs regular care to function well. Start with movement, the most fundamental aspect of physical well-being. Find ways to move that you actually enjoy, whether it's walking, swimming, gardening, dancing, or gentle yoga. The best exercise is the one you'll actually do consistently. Aim for at least 30 minutes of intentional movement daily, but remember that even 5 minutes is infinitely better than none. Pay attention to your joints too. Maintaining mobility in your shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles prevents many of the limitations people associate with aging. Next, consider your nutrition from the perspective of energy rather than restriction. Which foods leave you feeling energized and clear-headed? Which ones leave you feeling sluggish or foggy? Rather than following rigid diet rules, simply increase the foods that support your energy and decrease those that drain it. Stay well hydrated too. Proper hydration affects everything from joint comfort to cognitive function. Finally, prioritize your sleep environment and habits. The quality of your sleep directly impacts your mood, thinking, and physical resilience. Create a consistent sleep schedule, keep your bedroom comfortable and dark, and develop winding down rituals that signal to your body that it's time to rest. If sleep problems persist, address them with a healthcare provider rather than accepting them as inevitable. The beautiful truth about physical well-being is that the body responds to care at any age. You may not get the same results you would have at 30, but the improvements in energy, mobility, and resilience can be profound. And these physical capacities directly translate to your ability to engage in activities that bring meaning and joy, whether that's playing with grandchildren, traveling, pursuing hobbies, or simply maintaining your independence. As we come to the end of this video, take a moment to reflect on these 5 happiness-blocking behaviors: clinging to outdated identities, isolating yourself socially, living in the past, refusing to adapt to change, and neglecting physical well-being. These patterns don't develop overnight, and they won't disappear instantly either. But awareness is the first step toward change, and even small adjustments in these areas can dramatically improve your experience of life after 65. Remember Michael, who defined himself solely by his former career. He eventually joined a mentoring program for young entrepreneurs, finding a new identity that honored his experience while creating present-day meaning. Robert, who had become isolated, started with just one weekly coffee meetup that gradually expanded his social world. Thomas, stuck in the past, began a photography hobby that helped him engage with the present moment. William, who resisted all change, chose just one new technology to master, video calling, and found it opened doors he hadn't imagined. And David, who neglected his physical well-being, started with just 5 minutes of morning stretching that eventually grew into a daily walking routine. The truth is, happiness after 65 isn't about recreating your past or achieving some perfect circumstance. It's about adapting to your current reality with flexibility, maintaining connections that bring meaning, engaging fully with the present, embracing necessary changes, and caring for the physical body that carries you through each day. It's about recognizing that while certain capacities may diminish with age, your capacity for joy and fulfillment can actually increase if you approach this stage of life with intention rather than resistance. If you recognize one or more of these happiness-blocking behaviors in yourself, be gentle but honest in addressing them. Small, consistent changes are more powerful than dramatic overhauls that don't last. Focus on progress rather than perfection, and remember that it's never too late to create a life with more joy, meaning, and connection. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below sharing which of these 5 behaviors resonated most with you, and what small step you plan to take to address it. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. And here's something to think about until next time. What if the best years of your life haven't happened yet? What if, instead of looking back on happiness, you could be creating it right now? The choice, as it has always been, belongs to you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.